Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodeau, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
All right, we are back. It's time for Good Vibes. Debbie Cox DeNova is in the house. There she is. I love the topics today.
Thank you.
They're going to be fun, but productive.
Yes.
Well, most of them are productive that you do.
They're all productive, I think.
But this one, everybody needs to listen to this year.
For sure.
Releasing resentment. Mm-hmm. We've all had it. If somebody out there says, oh, I never resented anybody, they're lying. Right. All right, so, but how do you release it? How do you let it go? You have the floor.
What's interesting is that in my life coaching practice, there are themes that tend to arise. So I have several clients talking about the same thing, and that's a routine, the thing that happens. And right now, resentment is a topic that keeps coming up. And resentment is really that feeling of that someone did something. Resentment's always pointed at a person, right? We don't resent the tornado or the hurricane. We resent people, right? Yeah. And resentment comes because we feel like there was a demeaning of us in some way. Someone did something to lower our sense of value, respect, dignity, and it's impacting, usually, it feels like it's still impacting either the present or it's going to impact the future. So it's this seething and this unexpressed emotion that's within, and it is extremely dangerous and deadly, actually. So if you hold resentment within you, it actually can damage your health in so many different ways. We weren't designed to hold that breach in our connectivity as human beings. So, of course, the antidote to resentment is forgiveness. Mm-hmm. But we all know people who say they've forgiven, but you can tell when you really, right? You can tell when it's like, you know what, I'm just going to let God deal with that. And, you know, but you know deep inside that if they fell down a flight of stairs, you wouldn't cry. You wouldn't shed a tear. You know what I mean? Like there's that feeling of wanting to even the score, because that's what the ego does when you're holding on to this feeling of anger. And it's a very specific variant of anger, right? It says, I have been diminished. You have lowered my sense of power and respect and dignity, and I need to even the score. Right. So we have talked about the 3 R's before, which begin with resentment. Now, by the way, don't beat up on yourself if you have resentment. That's a normal human feeling, right? We all want to have a feeling of power and dignity and respect.
But a lot of people hold resentment against somebody else and they don't have all the facts.
That is the truth. So this is very important to recognize that sometimes you have a good lens on what happened. Sometimes you have a skewed lens, but it doesn't matter because resentment still resides within you. And we need to resolve that in order to bring health and well-being back to you, right? And so it's important, first of all, to recognize that you're not going to get through this human life without resenting. And the 3 R's, if you remember, you start with resentment, which goes to resistance. And so resistance is that sort of protective thing that you do. What you're really doing is you're vacillating between an experience of powerlessness, fear or terror of what might happen, and then anger and rage, which is a protective experience, and then back down to that powerlessness. So it's kind of like this soup, this experience that sort of like festers under the surface and it ferments into this what we call resentment, okay? So it's normal, but if you don't check it, it goes to resistance. And if you don't check that, that goes to revenge. Depending on your personality, revenge can be very, very overt and obvious. You know, some people go all the way to, God forbid, killing somebody, right? But revenge can also be very subtle. It's like withholding good from somebody or wishing them harm. But we all know the analogy, it's like drinking poison and wishing for the other person to die. It's actually impacting you worse than anything else. And even if you go for the egoic urge to actually get retaliation and revenge, it's like punching a brick wall, right? You can't get away with punching a brick wall without harming your hand as well. And that's the way we are as human beings. People who go for revenge, they actually find afterward, I don't feel better. In fact, I feel worse. So, but how do we get to forgiveness if we're not actually there? It's important to be able to dissect what's going on so that we understand and we can actually take some steps to it. And I have some steps here. So first, you want to be completely conscious of what it is that you resent. What do you think should not have happened, right? Why are you resentful? And actually write it down for yourself so that you can can get very clear, this is what I actually resent that happened, okay? This is unexpressed, oftentimes not even to ourselves. We even refuse to tell ourselves why we resent somebody. So first, get clear for yourself. Number 2, ask, honestly, no one else is looking, ask if part of this might be that you feel guilty in some way that you participated in it. Because it actually feels better to the ego to blame somebody else and actually make yourself a victim versus accepting some responsibility and going, wow, you know, if I hadn't left my door completely unlocked, maybe I wouldn't have been robbed, right? So it feels better to point the finger, not that we're relieving them of responsibility, but to understand that sometimes the feeling that you have is actually resentment toward yourself. And the ego does this thing where it kind of tries to hide that from you by going, it's them. They broke into my house and I was a victim, right?
Let me ask you something before the first break.
Yeah.
I find the resentment, if I want to talk to someone, whether it's a person over here or a family member or whatever, sometimes I hold back. I've learned to hold back because in addressing what you resent that they've done, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
And it escalates.
That is a big reason. So so then that's, again, finding out why you are not actually willing to express. Because remember, it's about that unexpressed feeling. So some people do it because they want to avoid conflict. They want to avoid more things happening. Some people really recognize that they've been stewing in it for so long that they can't perceive a way that they can bring this to the table in conversation without coming across in a little bit of a hostile way because they know they feel hostile and they already know intuitively, if I sit at the table with someone with like pent up hostility, they're going to definitely come back at me and it's going to be confrontational and it's going to be combative.
But some people tell you, just come talk to me if something's wrong. But then you do it.
And then it turns out.
And it go, whoa.
Right.
Yeah. So they really didn't mean it.
Yeah. So doing some of this work might help you come to the table in a different energy, let's just say. But it is important to talk
Let's
to
do
them.
this. We'll take a break. We'll be back with part 2. It's another good topic, releasing resentment. We'll be right back.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
All right, releasing resentment. That's the topic today on Good Vibes. Debbie Cox-DeNova is bringing us through it. All right, so you can have resentment with somebody you just do work with on a casual basis. You can have resentment from a family member. You can have resentment from a friend. You can have resentment from a lover. All have different magnitudes of intensity.
Yes. And the longer you go, the worse it becomes. So resentment is one of the most insidious hooks to the past that we can have. We sit there and we ruminate about it. And the problem is that we ruminate about it. In other words, we think about the past, we kind of spin it over, and we attach new meaning over time. So it's not just about what happened, it's about what happened within us. We talk about trauma, right? That it's really what's happened within us, what we made it mean. And then every time we think back on it, the new meaning that we attach or the new stories that we attach. So oftentimes people are reacting to the stories that they're telling themselves, the meaning that they're making of it, when none of that actually gels with reality, but within them, and nonetheless, they're actually creating this hostile environment within them. So it's really important to actually sit with the impact of resentment. Like, really ask yourself, if I keep doing this, right? If I keep holding on to this resentment in my marriage, in my with this coworker, if I kept going or got worse, what would happen to this relationship? What would happen down the line? Get real with that, but also recognize that, again, like I said, the cost to your health is astronomical. It's not worth punching the brick wall. We really need to actually release this within yourself. And then recognize that a big component of resentment is unwillingness to accept. So where can you find acceptance to what already happened? So a lot of people are just like, I can't, and they have it all convoluted that if I accept what happened, then that's like me giving my endorsement to it or me being a doormat, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about acceptance, what we're talking about is actually giving yourself a lens through which you can heal. People who do really well with trauma, they have a way of framing up what happened in the past in a beneficial way so that they can move forward.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people lately have said, man, I can't believe you let somebody get away with that or do that or whatever. It's different. 25 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Now I've learned how to go, is it really that big a deal in the whole scope of things?
Yeah.
If somebody screws you out of something, is it that big a deal to where you're going to obsess over it the rest of your life trying to get them back, or are you just going to move on and just pick up your marbles and go to another playground?
Yeah, and you know what's really powerful about that is that your ability to do that really resides within your awareness that what you're actually seeking for, that sense of the rejuvenation, let's just say, of your value, of your power, your sense of power, your sense of dignity and respect is not something that wounded part of yourself is actually looking for from someone else. It's actually looking for that through you. Because what really drives people crazy is that if they're resenting, let's just say, a parent or a sibling or a partner, ex-partner, that did something wrong to them, and that person refuses to actually admit that they were wrong, refuses to apologize. What a lot of times when clients come to me, that by that point they're like, they can't get over it because they're not giving themselves permission to heal until that person actually admits, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that to you, I'm very sorry. Well, if someone does something to you in the first place, the character that got them to do it in the first place is unlikely to take them to a place where they actually feel deep contrition. So now what? Your power is handed over to them. So if you can remember that you actually have the ability, and what that wounded part is looking for from you is a rejuvenation of the sense of power and dignity from you. So you don't need their permission for that. You can actually release them from that. If they apologize, then great. But recognize that what you're really looking for is for you to actually improve take your focus from them, put it onto you, and actually remind yourself that you are still somebody who has respect, power, and bring all of your energies into creating what you actually want instead of focusing on what you don't want. And this brings us to how you deal with the rumination, because a lot of people are thinking it over, and what they're focusing on is the causes and consequences that brought them here. They did that, and therefore I don't have enough money to do this. They did that, and now I'm alone, and I feel rejected, right? And so instead of ruminating on the causes and consequences, what if you moved to resolution? Again, this is not to say that you're relieving anyone of responsibility. Some people have it locked into resentment because they believe if I actually forgive this person, what I'm doing is leaving myself wide open to it happening again. And this is going to be my reminder that this will never happen to me again. I'll never let anyone do this to me again. And so they have it all twisted up. They're holding on to resentment so they can have that reminder. Well, you can take that reminder.
I find a lot of resentment comes from jealousy too.
For sure, for sure. But again, that's just because, again, when we talk about jealousy, there's this false belief they have something that I can't have. They have something I want that I can't have. Well, it's that part I can't have that you need to be focusing on with resolution. So how can I move forward? How can I take my power back? Where can I identify my locus of control? Instead of saying, oh, I'm a victim. This is another thing, is that in our society, being a victim means that you're the good guy. The ego needs to feel good and right. So if I can cast someone else as the villain and I'm the victim, then I'm the good guy and I didn't do anything wrong. But when you are willing to, with courage and without self-blame, identify where you played into what happened, then you can take your power back, so you can take the lesson and go, going forward, I'm not going to leave my doors wide open. Going forward, I'm going to check my balances when I'm working with a partner, that sort of thing. Taking the lesson, moving forward, then that part of yourself that is wounded can be assured that you have some power back as a result of what happened instead of in spite of it.
Yeah, some people want to fight out of resentment. It takes two of them to do it. If you walk away from it, they only have themselves to fight with.
That's it.
Leave them fight.
That's it. That's it.
Good topic. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to be back next week with another great topic from Debbie. So it's on Good Vibes. You won't want to miss it.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.